You are listening to the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network.
Hey Ramblers, today's episode is brought to you by Fangoria. Since 1979, Fangoria has been the authority in the world of contemporary horror. As the only sanctuary for horror aficionados in its early days, it has now grown into an empire that expands beyond its celebrated magazine. From t-shirts, coffee mugs, beanies, enamel pins, there's something for every horror fanatic in your world, even if it's you. So head on over to shop.fangoria.com/pencil and paper productions or use code pencil and paper productions at checkout to get 20% off your first order or magazine subscription. Yes, it is a mouthful, which is why there are links in the show notes down below. That's shop.fangoria.com/pencil and paper productions or code pencil and paper productions at checkout for 20% off. Fangoria, first in fright since 1979.
Buy it or we'll tear your soul apart.
You're listening to the Horror Ramblings podcast, the show about all things horror. We hope you enjoy the show.
You're listening to the Horror Ramblings podcast, the podcast that feels like a chainsaw to the back of the head, and we mean that in a good way. Today's show is brought to you by the Elvira-themed snacks, Sugar Tits, a free horror boob picture in every box. This is Lester, host over at the Horror Ramblings podcast, with my co-host and good friend, Steven. How you doing, Steven?
Pretty good now. I want to try out these Elvira Sugar Tits, or whatever you call them.
I'm telling you, that is a great marketing thing. You know, I gotta say real quick, my son accidentally called Tittygrams one day, and I got to thinking, that would be fantastic. Little boob-shaped snacks, and every box has a tit pic in it. You could do them horror-themed. They could be Elvira's Tittygrams, sugar tit flavor, and you could have a boob shot from a horror film in every box.
I'm loving this idea. Okay, so we got to have Sugar Tits as a thing.
I'm telling you.
So
I'm an idea man. What can I say?
Oh yeah. I'm all for it. I'll be buying plenty of boxes of that shit.
Hey, if you get enough of the box tops, you get a live free nude from someone. They'll video call you naked and be like, "Hey, how you doing?"
Nice.
Darcy, let's put you to work, babe.
Yeah, I mean, Christ, she gives enough free shots on Twitter, so why not? Let's do it.
Right? We can make a couple bucks, and we could donate some of the money to charity.
Perfect. I'm all for it.
We got this.
Yep.
How you doing, Steven?
Doing all right. We're kind of burning through the day, I suppose.
Yeah.
Everything good on your end?
Yeah, you know, I mean, as good as it can be. Today felt like a chainsaw to the head in a bad way, a little bit, but I'm recovering, I guess I could say, as well as you can, having a chainsaw to the head, you know.
Sure.
I saw an interesting video game. I wanted to tell you about it, and it completely slipped my mind, but it's like a carnival-themed game, and it's sort of like the whole Dead by Daylight, type idea, except the survivors are playing as these little, like, mechanical rabbits, and then the hunter is this large predator-looking thing, so it like towers over them, and it's stronger than them, obviously. But I guess this game, they're saying it's going to be pretty damn good.
Okay.
The world's in it. I guess there's a lot of places to hide. You can fight back a little bit more. You're faster than the killer in it and everything. And I guess the little rabbit characters, they sort of blend in with the environment a little bit. And it has, I can't think of what it's called. I used to game all the time, and I can't think of what it's called. When characters are in a certain area of a game, and they chat, and you can't hear them until you get up into that area. I can't think of what that's called. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with you. I can't think of the term.
But it has that too, and I guess they've like shown clips of people playing it, and like people make noise to distract the killer so that the other characters can go and do other things. And
Interesting.
like
Okay.
they whisper. I'll have to find the name of it. It's like called Carnival something, I think,
Mm-hmm.
or other. And then I thought I saw something about Art the Clown might be coming to Dead by Daylight.
Ooh, okay. Okay.
I could dig. I don't know how true that is, but I've heard like whispers of it.
Why not? I mean, the man is becoming an icon.
Yeah.
He's a baby icon. That's what Darcy said.
Yep, I knew it was going to happen. There's just the character's appealing, and I know you kind of when you watched Terrifier 2, I know it was sort of an experience for you because you were a little. I know you said you were a little lost in what they were trying to do. You understood it a little bit, but you wanted a little more context.
Right.
I know you watched All Hallows Eve. I know we briefly touched on that, and you said that kind of helped you a little bit. I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've been hearing a lot of good things, and I feel bad because I cannot think of his name right now, but the actor that plays Art, some people have talked about him playing Freddy. There's actually a post of someone that was in one of the Nightmare films, and she is standing there with him, and he's got a Freddy glove on, and she says, could he be our next Freddy? And I thought about that, and I could dig that, I think, if it was done correctly. I don't think he should try to be a beat-for-beat version of Robert Englund's Freddy.
Sure.
But I think he could be, oh man, imagine Freddy, but as vicious as Art the Clown.
Yeah. Could be interesting.
Perfect for it.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
speaking of Art the Clown, this is a nice little segue into our news that we have this week. We got a trailer for Terrifier 3. So, did you get a chance to check that out?
yeah, so it was just a teaser trailer, if I remember correct.
And this was the one that I'm almost positive they said ran with Terrifier 2 when they re-released it in theaters.
Yes, I believe so. I know I had seen an article that the opening sequence was so violent and twisted that a lot of the big studios, I guess there were a few big studios that were thinking about throwing some money at it, and they pulled out of putting money into it after the opening scene. All I can say is, and pardon me for saying it like this, but for lack of a better way of putting it, these studios need to stop being pussies.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you on that because they see the money. That's why they came there in the first place. We're like, ooh, this Terrifier movie made money. How about we try to get our hands on it? And then what do? The moment it doesn't adhere to whatever standard they're looking at, which the trailer's pretty dark. I mean, when you think about it. So, I guess I could see it, but at the same time, did you not do your research? Right. I mean, take a look at the 3 films in which this character has been featured.
Yeah, look at the source material and don't go asking if you can get a little bit of money out of it.
Right.
If you're going to just pull out, know the source material. I have to say, there was one thing that I really appreciated about the teaser trailer, and it made me feel a little nostalgic. It's the Christmas scene in it when the little girl goes, Santa, and he lifts up and he's got the axe.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the Tales from the Crypt
episode,
where she murders her husband. I don't know if it was exactly a nod to that, but that's what it made me think of. And I love in that Tales from the Crypt when he says, naughty
or nice.
Obviously, Art doesn't talk, but it would be really funny if there was like 2 dead bodies or something, and the little girl like he reveals them to her, and maybe he has carved in their skin on one of them naughty and on the other one nice or something. Yeah. That would be kind of cool. Morbid, but it's Art. That's what I would expect.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect anything less from him. So, we're gonna have to put a pin in that and come back to that Tales from the Crypt episode. I think we need to do that this year. I think we need to talk about that. Because I know we've been talking about getting around to Tales from the Crypt, and Christmas is right around the corner, so it would be an opportune time to talk about that particular episode because it's a classic as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. But I won't say much more than that.
Oh, I wanted to tell you something real quick.
Okay.
So I saw 2 movie reviews. One was It's a Wonderful Knife. It's gotten mixed reviews. I'm not going to shit on it until I watch it. Its reviews were okay.
And it's a horror film, so what do you expect?
And it's a comedy too, it's a fine line.
Yeah.
One that surprised me, though, I have not watched it yet, but they were doing that Wizard of Oz horror film. It was called Gale, Stay Away from Oz, I think is what it was called. They released a trailer for it.
Okay.
And like the granddaughter's talking about Dorothy and Dorothy's in the trailer there's like a scene where Dorothy's going, stay out of Oz, and like her face changes and conforms, and I saw it pop up on my newsfeed again, and I was like, this is interesting. Apparently it's out, it's available with I think there's some new streaming service that it's on, so I'm gonna wait until it's more available.
Sure.
IMDb actually gave it like an 8 out of 10.
Wow, okay.
And even on Rotten Tomatoes, it actually has some pretty solid reviews. So I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. I think I'm going to give it a watch because I don't know how much it delves into it. I think it's going to be more that maybe Oz was like some nightmare world that Dorothy somehow found herself in or what. I don't know. But I was surprised because it wasn't that I thought it wasn't going to be good. I just didn't know what to think of it.
Sure.
So the reviews definitely have made me go, yep, I need to watch it.
I mean, if you take a look at the history of that series, like the books themselves, I mean, they delve into some pretty dark shit. And I feel like the movies, obviously sugarcoat that. And over decades, almost a century now, Christ, can you believe that? It has been a century, I guess, for the books.
Yeah, I would, yeah.
Because they...
Man.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, within that century of just the books alone, anything in media, they have sugarcoated it or tried to do twists about it, but they stay away from the dark stuff, almost like what they've done with a lot of Disney properties, where people are like, well, like the Disney property, we're not gonna dig into the dark parts of it. And take a look at some of those original stories from Little Mermaid and things like that. That shit is dark, but yeah, I'm down to see it. I'm down to check it out. What else I got? Oh, I don't know if you saw this trailer or not. Nightmare on 34th Street. Did you check out it? It's like a horror anthology around Christmas.
I don't think I've seen that one.
I watched it. I was kind of like, maybe. I think that's one of those I'd have to hear good things about to really check out, because the trailer itself didn't really sell me on it. It just kind of, I don't know. There was just something about it kind of seemed meh.
You know what I would love to see? Speaking of anthologies, just real quick. I'm sorry to get away from the subject.
No, go ahead.
Netflix has that series, Love, Death, and Robots, I think is what it's called. It's a bunch of like animated things, and there's one of those about Christmas, and I don't know if you've ever seen it, but these kids stay up late because they want to see Santa, and they go downstairs, and Santa is this like weird looking monster, and it has these like hands like attached to where its mouth is, and it smells the kids. It smells the girl first, and it goes, nice. And it barfs out a present for this girl.
Yeah.
And it hands it to her. And then the little boy, it does the same thing. And it like hesitates for a minute, but it goes, nice. And then it spits it out. And then right before it crawls back up the chimney, it goes, stay nice. And it crawls up. And the little girl says, I wonder what would have happened if we were naughty. And I don't know what it was about that, but after I had seen that, whoever did that short, they should let that guy do a Christmas anthology series and maybe connect them, because Christmas anthologies seems like a hard thing to make scary.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it gets boring with Christmas. Halloween, you expect like off the wall stuff. Christmas, I mean,
because you have to stay within the theme, and it's not dark like Halloween or something like that. Like you said, with Halloween, you can find ways to twist something into something a little bit more dark and sinister, whereas Christmas, it's a little trickier. Unlike, what they did with Christmas Horror Story, I'll give them credit for that all day. The Santa story, and that was just
was that the one that I asked you to?
Yeah,
was that the one I suggested to you to watch, where the elves are like becoming zombies or whatever?
Yeah.
And it's the guy just snapped. Yeah, one of the best Krampus versus Santa fights I've ever seen too.
Absolutely,
just gonna put that out there. That is an underappreciated movie.
If you haven't seen it, it should be on the drive-in. If it's not, then look around. It's somewhere out there. I know that for sure. But I would definitely recommend that one. Did you know, and I had actually forgotten about this, to be honest with you, there is an Alien TV series in the works from the guy who did the TV show Fargo on FX, and I'm assuming this will also go to FX. And they're aiming for a 2025 premiere.
I gotta be honest, I remember hearing it once, and I love the Alien franchise, but certain franchises you just tend to get a fatigue with.
Sure.
And I've had a fatigue for that franchise since probably Alien versus Predator.
Fair.
So
Fair.
it's been a while.
Hmm.
I love the Aliens. I wish they would sort of get back to the basics of it.
Yeah.
The Alien Isolation video game, I loved it. I wish they would do something sort of like that with it. It doesn't need to be a big action movie to be good.
And it's funny too that they seem to forget that, because Aliens is probably the most popular out of the group, but yet there's no denying what Ridley Scott did with the original Alien and just that claustrophobic horror that comes with that. And I honestly feel like a lot of filmmakers forget that. I think that, oh Christ, what's his name? Whoever did Alien 3, someone's going to kill me. David Fincher, I think, did Alien 3, or a version of it. Let me clarify. So I think he was trying to go back to that. I think he was really trying to tap into that. And again, no disrespect to what James Cameron did with Aliens. That's a fantastic movie, but Fincher was trying to go back to that. And I honestly feel like the studio fought him on it because of the way Aliens played out. And then if you go to part 4, which was Resurrection, they kind of go back to the more action-oriented story. So, yeah, I'm with you. I would like something a little bit more akin to what Ridley Scott did, something a little bit more claustrophobic.
You know what they need to make a TV series of? The Thing.
Oh, shit, yeah.
Have that invade and slowly take over like a town or something. Get the guys that did Slither to come on and do it. Make it a little bit more of a, add a little bit of a comedy aspect, but practical effects and everything. Oh,
yeah.
Ugh.
Phenomenal. Okay, so the next thing I've got is that Netflix is apparently developing a standalone Fear Street movie. So I'm assuming this will not be attached to the trilogy that they did, which was fantastic, by the way.
Yes.
I think that's another franchise we need to talk about, because I would love to go back to that and revisit it, because I haven't seen it since it originally aired.
Has one of my favorite deaths in it of any horror movie, actually.
Oh yeah.
And the girl, I felt bad for her because she was a good character, and that was the bread slicing.
Oh yeah. Oh,
to the girl's head.
Yeah. That was good.
And a lot of people seem to forget Fear Street is actually written by R.L. Stine, the original books, and he wrote them as a more grown-up version of Goosebump books.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that. Like, people forget about that. But any Fear Street stuff that they do, I'm excited for, just because I'm with you. I loved the trilogy.
It was so unexpected, It was so unexpected how good it was. It was like, holy shit, this is solid.
Well, the camp one, I think it was the second movie where they show like the flashback when the one counselor gets possessed and he just starts killing the kids and everything. They didn't do it in a meaningless way. Killing kids, and it has to have meaning. But in this, you just see the sheer brutality of it.
Yeah.
And it was so good at doing that. Like, I thought it was going to be a big hype thing because everybody was talking about it. And I was like, I don't want to jump on the hype train of Fear Street. And then I was like, I'll watch it, see what the big deal is. And yeah, I'm right there with you. It was phenomenal. A lot of people say the last one is the weakest point, and that does tend to happen. I enjoy the last one for what it was.
It's not bad. It really isn't.
It's an enjoyable watch. And
sure.
If I hope they do this standalone, and then I hope they go, you know what? Let's do a few more of them, because as long as they stay consistent, I think that's a good way to go. And I think it's a good thing that they are doing standalone films.
Yeah.
The trilogy was great, but I think if they tried to do another trilogy, I think people would feel a little burnout.
Sure. Yeah, let's do singles, man. I mean, why not? I mean, there's a well to tap into. All those books that he wrote within Fear Street. Just adapt something from that, you know.
Yeah, I think it's Simon Pegg. He was Shaun on Shaun of the Dead, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So somebody asked him like why he doesn't do sequels to a lot of his movies, and I love what he said. He was just like, those stories have already been told. He's like, I don't see the point in revisiting them because I feel like it would take away from the enjoyment that people got. He's like, I love that people want sequels to them, but I don't think the sequels would do them justice. I think a lot more filmmakers should look at that.
There are some that are fun to have sequels to, and then some not so much. So
yeah,
I can wholeheartedly agree with that. I agree. Last thing I just wanted to bring up, just because it was a big deal. The actor strike ended. Yay! So, I'm hoping, and I say this with the biggest grain of salt, I hope that everything is fine. I've heard some concerns over the deal where some of the AI things have not quite been sorted. So hopefully before they ratify this deal, whatever that is that the concerns are about are sorted. I don't know all the details. I don't know what specifically is still kind of seeping through, but fingers crossed that everything is what they want it to be and the actors get what they deserve and studios can go fuck themselves.
Very much so.
But was there any news that you wanted to add to the whole shebang?
The only thing I wanted to briefly talk about was Five Nights at Freddy's and Saw X are currently killing it at the box office. I think they're the most successful films in the box office at the moment. So shout out to horror movies for that one. First off, I think that's just badass. And the only other thing I really wanted to say was we finally get to see Chucky in video game form. Dead by Daylight is putting Chucky in. I've seen some of the clips of him, and I gotta admit it looks pretty badass. A lot of people were saying, how is a little doll going to be freaky? But the way they designed him, the way that he just whips around the corners and sneaks up on people, yeah. If you get the chance to check that out, I highly recommend it, just because it looks entertaining. But I don't have anything else to really say. I just, for some reason, those stories just kind of stuck with me.
So yeah, let's talk about a movie that stuck with me after we finished. First, I wanted to give a shout out to friend of the show, Leah Coughlin, who recommended the film we're going to talk about today. We were kind of hoping she would join us for this conversation, but unfortunately there were some issues that arose that prevented her from being here like we wanted her. So maybe next time,
Hopefully, we most definitely would love to have her back.
Absolutely. If you didn't check out our first episode last season, which we talked about zombies, just the whole zombie craze, go check that out. But yeah, I'd love to have her back. So fingers crossed we can make that happen. But today we are talking about Eden Lake, which was written by James Watkins, which is also his directorial debut. The only things of his that I know, he's not done a lot, but the only things I knew of were Woman in Black and Black Mirror. And I've seen Woman in Black. I've seen a few episodes of Black Mirror, but I don't know if I've seen his particular one. I didn't look that deep. But I don't really know why he hasn't done much more. He seems talented enough. It's not a lack of talent. All of his stuff seems to be pretty highly rated. So I'm not really sure how this one got by us, because, other than the year it came out, because I feel like this movie came out at a certain point in time that we should have seen it. But also the movie's country of origin being somewhere in the UK might have something to do with it, but I'm not really specifically sure where it takes place. Now, this movie stars two fairly big stars, at least now anyway, because at the time I don't think they'd quite reached that certain level of fame. And Michael Fassbender at this point in time had been in such movies as 300, Inglourious Bastards, I think First Class, X-Men. That's where I first got to know him, and I think this was prior to that. So he had not quite hit that mark yet. So had I seen this movie with him on the cover, which I haven't seen a cover with him on it, it's only Kelly Reilly, I might have been like, oh, Fassbender, I like him. Because I do. I think he's a great actor, and I've actually went back and kind of looked up some of his stuff. But same, like I said, with her, I don't know of anything I'd seen her in prior to Yellowstone, and I don't think if I had ever started watching that show, I would even know who the hell she is, even though I've seen her in so many things.
And I have to say just real quick, this movie was a movie that kind of got by me as well, even though I will admit I was watching a YouTube video about surprising movie endings, and I'm not going to spoil it right now, but that was the ending of this movie was on that. So I had the ending of this movie spoiled to me way before I even watched this movie.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. But seeing Kelly Reilly's character in Yellowstone and how she is in that, and then seeing her in this, wow. Like, it threw me off because in Yellowstone, she's really hardcore.
Yeah.
she's tough. And I'm not saying that she's not in this, but it's just she's not as hardened in this, and it took me aback when watching this film.
Those kid conversations, it would have been Fassbender. It would have been her talking to them and pretty much tearing them a new asshole, like in verbal form.
Yeah.
It's one of those shows that I did not think I would actually care to watch because I didn't gravitate towards it. But then you start hearing all these people saying, "Oh, you gotta watch Yellowstone," and I'm like, "Do I?" And it just kept getting brought up, and I thought, all right, you know what? Fuck it. I'll give it a watch. I had the streaming service that it was on, and I got sucked in. And she's probably one of the biggest highlights because she is just, damn, the things she will say and do. Again, if that character was this character, if it was Jenny, this entire thing would have gone down completely different.
Very much so.
So, one aspect of this film that I read about and then I dug into after the fact, yet the director vehemently denies was the inspiration for this film, is the Broken Britain aesthetic about the roaming gangs and whatnot. And I thought, like, after I had that context, I was like, oh, okay, so that now makes more sense, like why this might seem more horrific to someone, because, we're not from there. We don't know what the system is like. So having that context, having that understanding kind of gave me a little bit of a better way to kind of view the film from that perspective, because we could just look at it as, some kids are assholes and things just go south. And that's that. But having some context that it's a problem, sure. So for him to deny that, it's a little odd. I don't know. That's weird. So now, Les, where were you able to watch this film? Because I only asked this because I want to complain about one little thing. My only options to watch the free version was like Pluto, Tubi, Vudu, Freevee.
Now, see, it's on Prime, and I thought, okay, cool, I'll watch it on Prime, no problem. But I watched it on Prime, and it had ads in it as well.
Yeah. Because I did the same thing, Lester, because I had to watch it I went through Amazon, because they said premium subscription. I thought, okay, great. I'll just watch it here, no ads. But it's through Freevee, which is their ad tier app.
That's right, yeah.
So we got screwed. We had to sit through ads. And let me tell you, I do not want to buy, or I don't even want to see Temptations for Cats anymore. Have you? Jesus fucking Christ. This ad was nothing more than listening to a cat lick its food for 30 seconds. And let me tell you, I hate that sound. I really do. So then it's right here in my ear, just go, and like, so I had to mute for a while.
You know what's hilarious? You got ads about the food going in. I got ads about the food coming out. I got a whole bunch of ads for kitty litter. So
Nice.
rock hard kitty litter. Some guy was hitting it with a tennis racket, and there were two cats that looked like people laying in bed. Oh, it was horrible. And the cats are like sitting there, and the one cat was like, they were like had clothes on and stuff, and the one cat looks at his wife or whatever, and I'm like, what is going on here? And he's like, I love watching internet videos about humans. And I'm like, what is going on here?
Jesus Christ.
The movie was great. The ads were like an acid trip.
Yeah.
So.
With those aside, let's talk about the movie. I did not know what to expect going in. I did not look into it, okay? Now, I looked up to see who was in it, but that's about as far as I went. And then Leah gives me this vibe of basically saying, it's fucked up. And, I began preparing for the worst. I don't know what I'm probably creating more scenarios in my head than, because I did not see how it played out coming, but I do have some observations of that. So it essentially starts with getting to know the teacher, Jenny, and I feel like that was such a smart move for getting to know this character because, now I don't know how you feel about it, but the ending I think would have hit differently, and we won't get into that just yet, but I think it would have hit differently if these two were painted out to be kind of jerks. You know what I mean? There's nothing about her that says, I'm a bad person. She seems like she's got a good heart. She seems like she's trying to do right. Now, Steve was a character that did some questionable things at times, but overall, I wouldn't say he was a bad guy, but then there were some moments where he did some things where you're like, well, come on, man. Be a little bit better than that. So I still wouldn't say that I would necessarily think that he deserved anything. And I think that's a common trope that you see with a lot of horror movies that this does not follow, is the people who get killed, tortured, maimed, whatever you want to call it, in the grand scheme of things. In other horror movies, they're kind of jerks. And you're like, yeah, you want to see them die. These two seem like a decent couple. Like, there's nothing off about them or anything like that. So Steve is getting ready to take her away to Eden Lake, which is, as I understand it, a place he grew up kind of visiting, hanging out. Like, this is a place that he loved, and he wanted to take her to this place that he loved so he could do something special. And obviously we know that he wants to propose, but I kind of get the sense that she maybe kind of sort of figures it out too. And on their way there, we kind of get an understanding of this town. And I feel like there are some flags that go up if you pay attention. Because I didn't really pay much attention at first to the restaurateur, the waitress, as they were talking about some of the kids in the area. And she does wind up back at the end, does she not?
Yeah.
I thought I recognized her. I was trying to remember which one she was. But we go to this remote lake. They get to their little countryside spot and get to meet some local children. I would say they're, 13, 14?
Yeah, I mean, I would say they were probably anywhere from 14, maybe up to 17. I don't think any of them were adults or young adults. So
all of varying age, and the dog. And not to even mention the one kid that they meet before they run into them.
I think his name was Adam. I'm pretty sure that's what
Adam, that's right. And he their first interaction with him was he was just playing on the beach.
Yeah.
Or wherever they met him, and he's just like, yeah, I'm not supposed to talk to strangers. And again, her response to that is like, you know what? You're absolutely right. We're going to leave you be and we'll move along. And
yeah,
I just feel like that adds more to her character. Just these little moments that she has, like the scene at the bar. And this is where I kind of felt like Steve had I don't know how to say this, like you question where he would be in a situation with being a parent. Because, you heard the kid screaming or whatnot as they're sitting there drinking at the table. And he's like, that kid could use a good, and then you see, and it's almost like he had his words thrust upon him, full force. And then he almost seemed like he was maybe reconsidering his thought.
One thing that I just wanted to sort of say about Steve as a character, some of his actions, which this movie beautifully used subtlety to give you a lot of details about characters, as you've been been mentioning, the little things that really do add up. For some reason, the feeling that I got from Steve as a character and the way that he sort of interacted with things is, I feel like he did grow up at Eden Lake. He lived in that area. And I think he may have been one of those kids, not as bad as those kids, but I think he might have been one of those kids that maybe ran around with another little gang of kids. And he got out of that life.
That's possible. I never thought about that.
Like I could see something like that. I feel like the reason that he sort of acts the way that he does in certain situations is because maybe he wasn't necessarily, a bad kid, but maybe he was just one of those kids that, kids are kids. Some kids like to cause trouble and things like that. That's just the feeling that I got from him as a character. Just because of like some of the subtle things that he did and some of the things that he let go and things like that. I wanted to say that real quick while I was thinking about it.
And, that's an interesting contrast to Jenny. I mean, she seems like she views children as precious. I mean, being a teacher, how many teachers do this day and age? They probably want to slap the shit out of a few kids, but she seems to be one of the good ones. So focused on the first interaction they have with the teenagers, I wanted to ask a general question. If you were in that situation, what would you do?
It'd be one of two ways. I'd either tell the kids to fuck off, or I would probably try to handle it in the more responsible and adult way, and I'd probably just leave. Because honestly, yes, there are a bunch of teenagers, but even where I live, and the reason why this movie, which I will get into later, this movie kind of hits home a little bit for me, because kids have seemed to just get gradually worse over the years. I would probably just leave. Eden Lake's big. Why do I need to go to Eden Lake? If it were me and I was proposing, we would have had maybe one day there, proposed, maybe taken a road trip or something. If we knew that these kids were around the area being little hoodlums, I wouldn't see a point in it. And getting a hold of the law, you don't know what that's going to do.
Sure.
A place like that. So I would probably just shove off, because it's just not worth it for all that confrontation. So.
Well, see, that was where I was at with it too, is it's a lake. There's plenty of beach. Move along. I understand that they're bothering you because you're at this spot too, but is it worth it? Just move along. I'm with you. I would have just said, fuck it. If I can't find another spot, we'll just go somewhere else. We'll come back later, whatever it may be. It's not worth all the grief, because, yeah, kids are assholes.
That level of disrespect and everything that happened in that one event would have been enough for me to go, if these are going to be the people that are here the whole time that we wanted to be here, we don't need to be here.
And that's part of one of my issues is, but again, I understand I'm not this person. There are people who are going to be like Steve. And I know a few of those people. I'm just, I'm at a time where it's just like, I don't need this drama. Fuck it. I'm out. I'll deal with it if it comes to me directly, but I'm not going to go seek it out. So here was a scene that I didn't quite understand, and perhaps you may have viewed it differently and gleaned something differently from it that I didn't. Why did Steve sneak into that house? Like, what was he looking for? What was his intention?
I personally think that whole scene was nothing more than to help the story move along a little bit, because we get a glimpse into what these kids' home life is like. I mean, the one door has a hole in it from where they punched through the door, and I've seen people do it before where they've gone to a house and they've gone to knock on the door's open, and they kind of yell in or they poke their head in a little bit. But yeah, going all the way in like he did,
yeah.
At that point, I don't know exactly what he was doing. So in my mind, I'm just saying they're strictly doing this to push the story along a little bit, give us a little more context into things. That's the feeling I got from it.
Okay. Because I remember the scene, and even as you described, every event happening, I was like, yeah. It was just going in. I was like, what did I miss? Like, why are you stupid enough to just... it's breaking and entering, pretty much. He might not have broken anything, but he did. I don't know. It was a stupid thing that I was just having trouble trying to rectify in my head. I was like, what did I miss? And clearly I missed nothing.
There is one thing I really did appreciate about that scene, though. when Brett's dad comes home
Hmm.
and he hears the thud upstairs and he's instantly like aggressive
Yeah.
toward Brett, and he's going up the stairs and everything. To me, that spoke volumes, because it's like, okay, this kid's obviously violent because all he knows is violence.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that in the context of giving us more reason, because yes, I think in horror films you don't always need a reason why characters do the things they do, but I would like a little bit of some explanation. I don't want to be completely in the dark. And just that small, again, something subtle that this film did that really spoke volumes. It's something that shows why some of these people are doing the things that they're doing. That's another reason why I appreciate, I might be jumping around here real quick, but Brett having his girlfriend record everything on her phone.
Hmm.
That way all the kids, he's like, we've got you on camera, so you have to help us finish this. That's something subtle, but at the same time, you're like, he's sort of blackmailing all these.
Yeah, I want to jump on that right now, but I'll keep moving along because I got some shit to say about that little prick. Anyway, after he breaks out of the house, or yeah, we'll say he escapes from the house because he did. So they get back to the lake. Their stuff is missing, from what I can remember. Eventually, their car is missing when they have this return, and that's when they find out that the kids, or assume the kids have probably done this, they almost get ran over by their own car, by Brett behind the driver's seat. Then they go to confront the gang out in the woods at night. And if I've missed anything within that frame, let me know. But this is where I felt like the movie really turned, because shit gets really, really bad from this point on.
Now, I might be on a different page with them finding the kids, because to me, I feel like when they were trying to get back to town, I feel like it was a disagreement between Jenny and Steve. I feel like Jenny wanted to get back to town, and for some reason, I think Steve wanted. I think these teenagers pissed him off enough to where he was like, "I'm gonna set these kids straight. They need to learn to respect adults. I'm gonna go get our stuff back." Because the whole time they're, having that whole interaction, trying to get the keys back, all Jenny wants to do is get out of there. That's all she wants to do. And she's telling him, like, Steve, come on. Let's just go back to town. Let's just go. And I think if he would have listened to her, I think things would have gone much differently than they did.
So at this meeting spot, the way this scene plays out, and I will say this movie made me angry so many times, because I saw how these interactions were happening. I saw how certain reactions played out, and I don't like bullshit interactions that just like this. So we see Steve does kind of egg this on. Okay, he did come there. He did start demanding. Granted, he's in his right to want his stuff back. I get it. But as this escalates, he's not helping matters. Brett pulling a knife, you have to defend yourself, sure. But then when the dog is stabbed, accidentally, because defense, and then Brett's like, you killed my dog. Bullshit. You started this by sicking the dog, or at least having the dog, all that, which is probably a great dog. And she was just trying to protect her owner. I get it. But everyone's starting to do the blame game, and it's just like, no. You're responsible for this. You're responsible for that. Everyone's being blamed for the wrong shit. Am I wrong here? As
weird as it sounds, I was in a similar situation, not with a dog dying, but just so you know, I was at a friend's house, and there was a heated argument because their dog was running around without a leash on, and it quickly escalated and turned into this big heated argument. And seeing this scene in the movie actually took me back to that. I think a lot of what happens in that scene, like you said, Steven, it's a lot of bullshit, but it's very real.
Yeah.
Because in situations like this, people place blame, people are irrational, and I'll give them credit. Like, the irrational arguments in this film, there's a lot of realism to them, and it to me, if it annoys you a little bit that it's playing out the way that it is, I think that's because psychologically it takes you to a point where you've seen something like that really happen, and you're like, these are just like the fucking jackasses I deal with all the time.
Right.
So, to To me, the dog getting jabbed was it was just an honest mistake. It was not something that he was intentionally trying to do. We all have a fight or flight instinct, and that's what happened. To me, it's almost like the dog jumped up and got stuck. Like he didn't even really stick the dog. The dog was its own undoing by jumping up.
Sure.
But the anger and everything pushing ahead, and then him trying to be a rational adult and be like, "Hey, I'll take the dog to the vet." I don't think it was just him trying to be nice. Obviously, it was him trying to be like, maybe they'll let us get the hell out of here if we offer. To me, there's a lot of realism in that, because it's like people will do whatever they can to save their own skin when they need to.
Yeah.
So
and how Brett reacts after the fact, where he's just enraged. Like, doesn't matter what happens from this point on. I don't think there's anything they could have said that would have changed his mind. He is on the path to destroy them at that point. Because I don't know how you felt about this, but to me, Brett always felt like he was like the sole psychopath of the group, but yet was not doing those things. Like, he was forcing everyone else to partake while he stood back like, "Oh, it wasn't me. And especially with that one girl recording everything as it happened, he could be like, "Well, I was just there. I wasn't participating. Do you see me anywhere? Am I doing anything? Nope, it wasn't me." So I almost kind of felt like that was going to play in at some point, like he was going to push all of this onto everybody else and get away scot-free.
he's very Charles Manson-like.
Yeah. And how they put up with that, that's another thing. But again, the realism, for Christ's sake, because too much realism to make me angry.
Yeah, I feel like that's the strong thing about this movie, though. It, especially where I live, violence that is committed by children is like on the rise, and it's sad, but this movie really shows that uglier side of life, that even kids are capable of terrible things.
Mm-hmm.
And even worse, parents might not always condone their actions, but parents will do whatever it takes to protect their children, even if it's something heinous. To me, it's a reflection on different aspects of the real world. That's what I think of when I think of this film. And it's scary to think about that, because you hear things that kids do, and you see these kids in this film doing these things, and it's not that far off from the truth of what, some of these kids could do. I looked at these kids like more of like a cult than a gang, and Brett's their leader. Like I said earlier, he was like Charles Manson almost. He was convincing them to do these horrible things. And if there was ever a kid in a horror movie that I wish they would make a sequel just to make that kid suffer, Brett would be that kid.
Okay, so I have another question to maybe explore a certain aspect of the film with the kids, because we're kids of a different time period. I remember, getting spankings. That was a thing. Now you can't spank your children. And
I didn't get that memo.
Granted, yeah. So there's this correlation that I feel like, I don't know if there's been studies or anything like that, but they'll say, well, if you spank your children, they'll have anxiety problems, yada yada yada. Sure, I might be able to attest to that, but I don't hate my parents for what they did. I understand they were a product of their time. It happened to them, so on and so on. Did it fuck me up? I don't know. Maybe to a point, but I don't blame them for it. So when you look at kids today and you hear that they don't get punished the same way, and then you see shit like this, the disrespect where they just think that they're king gods of everything, do you feel like there's that correlation that maybe perhaps they don't, could use an ass whipping every now and again? Because I personally do. That's just me. And, I've even had arguments with some of my older kids, because I didn't think about what I was doing as being mean. Like, I wasn't like beating them to death with a belt or anything like that. But, you would do the spankings, you would be hard on them. But it was, in my mind, I'm trying to make them better. I'm trying to not make them do the stupid things that I used to do or anything like that. I want them to be better than me. And I don't know. That's the question I'm kind of laying out there. Do you think kids being disrespectful is a change of corporal punishment or something else entirely?
In all honesty, my parents are a little older, so we were brought up a little more old-fashioned. it wasn't, my dad didn't beat us or anything. If we did something really bad, it was like 2 smacks. Like that was your spanking. But, back then, dad hit like the Hulk.
Sure.
Or so we thought as kids, And, we all turned out nice. It's like I joke with people. I go, yes, I have voices in my head, but mine argue over what flavor of ice cream I should get. They don't tell me I need to kill anybody.
Yeah.
My kids are good kids. Don't really ever get in trouble. My son sometimes has issues just because I can't control everyone else's kids. I can't punish other people's kids. Would I like to? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But I think the thing that this film really shows, and it's something, again, here where I live, I see it a little bit more because of what my wife does for a living. The amount of kids getting together now and forming these little gangs and pressuring each other to do horrible things, that is the scariest thing to me. Most kids individually are not necessarily bad kids. Maybe they just need a little tenderness. Maybe they just need that little extra bit of, love from someone, or they just need to talk to somebody. Obviously, in this movie, we see that none of these kids really got all that much love. But I don't know, this film to me I found it difficult to watch certain aspects of it because I know my kids are good. I know my kids wouldn't do anything like that, but I would hope and pray that someone wouldn't try to convince my kids to do something like that. I can't think of the one boy's name in the movie, but the one kid had finally had enough. And he was calling someone, and Brett, I looked up like the deaths in this film, and they counted that kid as a death, so Brett must have beat him to death. You especially don't want that to be your kid.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead here, but that's another thing that I want to give Jenny credit for. Even when she was like at her wit's end, whenever one of these kids got hurt or something like that, she felt bad about it. Like she felt horrible about it.
Mm-hmm.
And in all fairness, I think that's right when that turn happened for her, because I feel like there's a lot of psychological aspects to this film, especially with her character's development, because we see her go from this school teacher who loves children, who in the beginning just wants to... I feel like she wanted to help these kids at the beginning a little bit. She wanted to understand why they were acting like how they were acting. And then she got to the point where she was like, kids are kids, they're teenagers. And then it started to get gradually worse. And then we finally get to this point where she's just had enough, and it's like something just snaps in her. And she realizes not all kids are innocent. Some kids are corrupted. And it's bad enough to see a child lose their innocence. But to me, it was more terrible to see her realize that these kids had no innocence. To see that realization on her face. It'd be like finding out your own kid was a serial killer or something. Like, she doesn't want to believe that kids could do the things that they do in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is what has stuck with me the most after watching it. So I'm sorry, I'm rambling on here.
No, we're fine. So let's go to the big scene where everything kind of blows up, because after the whole incident at night, Steve does kind of get, or they tried to run away in the car, crashes the car. Steve gets trapped and captured while Jenny runs away. And the next morning, she stumbles upon them. He's tied to a rock with barbed wire. And this is where shit started really getting bad, because depending on how you can tolerate certain things, this could be a rough one. And it didn't get rough for me until one damn scene, and it wasn't even graphic, but it was just the thought of it. Like you're piecing it together in your head, and you're like, I don't want to see that, and you're not, but you still kind of visualize it. And that's, well, first of all, they just start stabbing him. Each kid has to take a turn stabbing him so they can all be implicated. See how smart Brett is? And that was one of the things that was pissing me off about that kid. It was like, okay, so you're a little psychopath that's going to make everybody else do your dirty work? Fuck you. And all these kids just did it. Like that one kid sticking that knife in Steve's mouth. I mean, God damn, that got to me. And you didn't even see anything, it was just the thought of it, And as all of this is going on, Jenny is off in the distance. She's watching everything, not knowing what to do, because what could she do? I mean, it sucks that she has to even sit there and watch all this happen. But none of the kids are going to help, or at least you wouldn't think so. And obviously, I mean, they're just the fact that they've got him tied up to a rock and are stabbing him would just give you pause. Like, oh, these kids are fucked up. So
that was the worst one for me. Honestly, it was when they asked Mark to cut him, and Mark pulls out his own knife, and he just walks up, and there's like a little pause for just a second, and then he tears into him, and I'm pretty sure he was the one that did the abdomen cut, but like up until that scene, I was like, these kids are just listening to Brett. He's like really trying to get him to get these kids to do this. And I thought maybe some of these kids would like go against him. And then when Mark comes up and just cuts him, I mean, Brett just says, "Mark, you're up." And Mark just gets up and he pulls out his own knife and just wham. I'm like, oh man, these kids are down to business.
Yeah. So eventually she distracts them long enough so Steve can break free. I guess barbed wire isn't the best option to tie someone down with. But anyway, Jenny causes a distraction, which allows Steve to escape. Jenny is then chased through the wooded area while Steve makes his way back to the car. He trips the car alarm, which then in turn alerts the kids. But he also grabs a tire iron for defense, which is smart, and then heads back out into the woods. Now, eventually, Steve and Jenny cross paths, and that could have gone terribly wrong had Steve actually struck Jenny with that tire iron that he took a swing at her with. Not knowing that it was her, obviously, but, I thought about that after the fact. She's like, holy shit, that would have been an entirely different movie if he'd have hit her with that. But anyway, they make their way to a rickety old fishing shack where Jenny examines Steve's wounds, trying to do whatever she can to patch him up. And, I guess he was surviving on adrenaline up to this point because, he pretty much gives out after that.
I'm going to give Fassbender some credit for that entire scene. Him trying to fight, going into shock and everything. Like, he was so convincing in that moment. And I'm sitting there just enthralled by it. And I'm feeling so horrible for him. It made me forgive the earlier scene when he almost whacks her with the tire iron, and then they leave the tire iron, because I was like, what the hell? Why are you leaving that? That's a weapon. But he's so great in that moment. You legitimately feel like you're watching something real, and that he's really dying right in that moment.
Yeah, I kept waiting for him to, I don't want to say man up, but just, I don't know. I guess what I mean is, like, you see him in all these other movies where he's just this badass tough guy, and I'm not saying he's not tough, but I don't know. You're just waiting for that turn, like he's just going to I don't know. It's Fassbender, goddammit.
He got taken out by a bunch of kids. It's one of those things where you're just like, come on.
Nah. But no, I understand. Anyway, so yeah, they track him down to that fishing shack. They get underneath the floorboards. They are trying to hide away from the kids. Now, luckily, the kids don't see them, which allows Jenny to carry Steve to a point where she attempts to hide him in some brush. Steve gives her some directions to head towards in hopes of getting back to town. And, she's on her way. Now, along the way, Jenny steps on a very big spike out in the woods. So not only is she injured, but she lets out a very loud scream, which then alerts the kids. But what she did to get that spike out...
Yeah, she bites down on that stick and just pushes.
I still don't even know what the hell it was either. It was just some big... Because I backed it up. I was like, what the fuck did she step on?
I wondered if the kids like had spikes and stuff set up in booby traps or something. But that's the only time that you see something like that. So I was like, well, maybe that's not it.
I mean, it's possible. Anyway, after removing the spike, she continues to follow along the path, and that's when she runs into Adam. I had a gut feeling the moment she ran into him, because at first I thought, oh yeah, that's great. She's got an ally. And then he was just being, the very first time he was being kind of wishy-washy about something. I was like, fuck, something's not going to happen the way it should have. Because we didn't even mention that when we first met Adam. They witnessed him getting bullied by the same prick. And they didn't do anything to intervene either. Which I feel like that's the time you intervene. The fucking radio and shit, that's one thing. But seeing a kid being picked on, be like, hey, what are you doing? But yes, Jenny eventually does hobble her way to Adam, who is apparently their rat. Which, again, it doesn't make any sense to me. But again, realism... there are kids out there who would do this, who have been picked on and bullied to the point where they feel like they have to do whatever the bully says, and that's what he's doing. So they tie her up with Steve's dead body and proceed to burn her. But what were you going to chime in on?
I was going to just bring up that whole scene because that's when we find out that Steve had died. And it's even worse when she wakes up and one of the kids is like, she's waking up. And Brett's like, it's because you didn't fucking hit her hard enough.
Yeah.
I'm like, you guys are just going to knock her out and burn her alive. But them saying that Steve is dead, they're just real nonchalant about it. And then they want Adam to be the one to light them up. And he doesn't, and I don't think he ends up doing it. Somebody else lights him up. Yeah. And so she escapes, and Brett grabs a hold of Adam because he's right there. And he's like, if you don't come back here, bitch, I'll light him up. And she lights Adam, and he lights Adam up. And she looks down, and I think she pukes, if I remember right.
Because you hear his scream gets just, it elevates. Yeah. And I think that's what makes it worse. And
it might sound bad, but I didn't feel all that bad when he got burned up. I know that might sound awful.
I kind of had similar, like I was kind of torn between because it was terrible. I hated that the kid got tortured even worse just for being, a target of this bully. And he was just trying to not be bullied. So he was damned if you do, damned if you don't, one way or the other. So it sucked that he had to die. But at the same time, I was like, if you could just find your way out of this situation, maybe it wouldn't have happened. I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't know if it was because I was really hoping he would end up being a good guy and helping her.
Yeah.
Maybe it just put a sour taste in my mouth. But I'm just sitting there and I'm like, well, like, it sucks that this is happening, but you're sort of getting your comeuppance, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know that sounds terrible, but
no,
I was like so mixed up about it.
Yeah, and clearly the other kids were too, because you see several of them looking visibly concerned after Adam dies. But anyway, Jenny eventually finds herself at a rest stop in the forest with a "You Are Here" map and marker. She shatters the glass to take the map, and then she hears the kids coming, so she then has to hide in a trash bin that no doubt smells like aged, rotten ass. Now, Brett and one of the other little psychopaths notice that she took the map, kind of freaking out that she's going to find her way back. But then they also notice she wrote a note in, I guess, it's like a visitor's book on the map stand. And they take note of it. They rip it out and chuck it in the bin that she's hiding in. Luckily, they don't see her because obviously they recoil over the wretched stench that she is sitting in. Now, as they take off, Jenny then exits the bin, walks over to the shattered glass from the map, and creates a shiv using part of her dress. As she's looking herself in a mirror, Cooper, one of the kids who seemed pretty reluctant about participating, approaches Jenny from behind. And the moment he speaks to her, he or she immediately stabs him in the neck, which is unfortunate because he seemed like he was getting ready to change his allegiance. He was the one, when he actually had to stab Steve, was the one that actually threw up after he did it. So you could tell he was really, really struggling with this whole thing. And it really did kind of make you wonder where Jenny's head was at this point, because she'd been through hell by this point. So was she just thinking that it was another kid, or was she just so zoned out? It's like, fuck it, I'm stabbing the first.
That was what really hit me in that scene. And that's what showed me that she's being pushed over her boundaries of what she wants to do. And she doesn't want to hurt any children. She wants to be that school teacher who's there to help children, and to completely go against what is just so ingrained in her. It's almost like a part of her is dying as this boy's bleeding to death in her arms.
So from that point on, we come back to the group, or at least Brett, finding Cooper, and this just fuels his rage even more because, he's not responsible for any of this. He didn't set this whole thing in motion. It's everybody else. So much so that he beats the shit out of another gang member in that moment. All of this because he called him out for his bullshit, finally placing the blame where it belonged. Even Paige looked to be having some regret after seeing all of this play out, so she also runs off when Brett starts shouting at her. And eventually, Jenny makes her way to a road and immediately runs into a guy driving a van and asks for his help. And he was like, oh, I got to go pick up my brother, so we got to go into town. She's like, no, town's that way. He's like, no, I got to go this way, and then we can go that way. And come to find out, he seemed to be the brother of one of the other kids. And the moment she realizes, oh shit, she steals the van, takes off in the other direction, and then runs over Paige, who happened to make her way to the road at the moment she was passing by. And she didn't hit her accidentally either. That shit was intentional, clearly showing that Jenny was broken. And fair, because she has been filming this entire ordeal, seemingly bothered by it, but you're still filming it. So you kind of feel like you're on the same level as Brett at this point because you're not stopping it. And you seem complacent with the whole thing. So Jenny eventually makes it into town. She narrowly misses hitting another vehicle, which causes her to lose control and crashes through someone's yard and T-bones a car. Now, she exits the van and casually makes her way into a backyard party at this house. And she wanders into their big pool area and just screams, somebody help me, please. And passes right out on the lawn, and I wasn't sure where we were going to go from here. I was, fingers crossed, good things. Oh no. No. The movie finds a way to continue to go down into the depths of hell because she wakes up on the couch. They seem to be treating her, trying to figure out what's going on. She's trying to get her bearings. And as she's being taken care of, the details start to come out.
And we do see the waitress as well from earlier. She pops up. The whole time that is happening, I'm sitting there watching, and I just go, well, this just got fucked.
This gave me Texas Chainsaw vibes at this point. That's the kind of turn I felt when you think you're safe, and then those that you thought were making you safe are turning out to be just as bad. Because granted, they are not the kids, but they take everything against her because Brett's like, oh, it wasn't me. And who are they going to believe, the stranger or their son? But things begin to unravel, and Jenny begins asking for the police, then locks herself in the bathroom. She starts hearing screaming from the outside. Then eventually there's a banging on the door. Once they get her out, Brett's father says something about killing a little one, which this could mean Adam or Cooper. I'm not sure which. Do you have like an idea of who she might have been talking about here? I would assume Cooper because she did kill Cooper, but the little one seems more like Adam. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then she began apologizing for it, and that was like huge, like, shut your fucking mouth, don't say a word, because you're just implicating yourself further, because there's so much more to the story. But they're not going to hear that. You're just like, you killed a kid, you're dead. And within this moment, we see parallels, how the townsfolk are treated by Brett's father, and how much Brett is very much like his father. I mean, the whole dynamic is very much reflective of how he treated his friends. But after some similar arguments that we saw, Brett's father drags Jenny back into the bathroom with two of his buddies following behind, one seemingly a little bit more reluctant than others, very much like Cooper. And then they cut to Brett at this point, and the little son of a bitch deletes the videos from the phone and then just stares into a mirror, and we cut to black, and I was like, fuck that ending. God damn it.
It's so ambiguous. And that was my big problem, because after it was done, you want to know what happened. Like, that was my thing. I want to know what happened to her. I want to know how they went about it. I'm weird like that. What did they do to this poor woman? And what's even worse is, part of me was like, I wonder if they made sure 100% that she was dead, or they just tossed her somewhere, and she died slowly later on. What all would they have possibly done to this poor woman? In all honesty, as soon as she crashed the van in the first place, if it were me in that situation and she was still conscious for a little bit before she fainted, I'd have tried to back that bitch up and kept driving. I'd have gotten as far away from all of that situation as I possibly could till I could not go any further. I wish that would have happened, because the ending of this, even my wife looked up as the ending was taking place and she went, "What the fuck was that?" Because you're just sitting there watching it going, really? Come on.
I with the ending, the way it went down, I respect it a lot, because I even thought sequelizing, like if you did a sequel, then what would you do? But I feel like if you do, then you take away, like you cannot follow this through these characters, any of them.
Yeah.
And keep the ending intact. Because the moment you change that or you explore it further, the ending doesn't have the punch it does anymore.
Yeah. No, the only reason that I ever thought any like sequel things, it wasn't because I think they should ever make one. I hated Brett so much that I just wanted to see something bad happen to him.
Yeah.
I think I will commend them for not trying to make a sequel. And even for giving the ambiguous ending, because yes, it really pisses me off the way that it ends, but it pisses me off in a good way, because after the credits roll, you sit there and you're just like, I can't even imagine what happened after that. And you just, I know the one of the last lines that Dad says before they take her, because they take her into the bathroom, he's like, "We're going to get her a shower," or he says something along those lines. So as you said, they probably did God knows what to her in that bathroom, and then took her who knows where. And you think about some of the other lines he says. The one guy that was arguing with Brett's dad about, well, there's children involved, the cops are going to ask questions, and he's like, well, we won't give them any fucking answers. It makes you wonder, like, did they dispose of the children's bodies? How did they go about everything? Like, there's a million questions that you ask yourself after the credits roll, and it gives me anxiety thinking about it, because it's like, what happened to all of these people,
Yeah.
And how much worse is this going to be? And then I even wonder down the line, what if Brett has a child? And that his kids are going to be just as fucked up, if not worse.
Mm.
And it's like, Eden Lake won't be there anymore because they're building, all the apartments and everything.
Yeah, this was a film that definitely gives you a slap in the face, but as kind of mentioned, give them respect, because as you watch the movie, or at least this is how I viewed it, you're waiting for those moments that you see in all other movies where it's going to turn, where you're waiting for that badass, she's going to get her revenge, she's going to get away, and they never give you any of this. You want Brett to get his comeuppance, and you never get it, and you're just like, fuck you. Yeah. That's why you hate it, but you can respect it so much because they do not go down that road. Yeah. And I like being surprised, and I certainly was. So it sat with me all day.
I loved it, and it gave me vibes of another movie, and I wish that the other movie would have taken notes from it. The movie The Strangers, the first one. The only thing that I think could have been a little different, possibly, the ending's good when the kids come in and she screams and everything, but if they would have cut to the credits after they stab them and you don't know what happened to them after that point, I think the movie would have hit a lot differently. And I think if they wouldn't have made a sequel, it would have hit way differently than it did. But for some reason, it just sort of gave me vibes like that. It was, the whole thing in Strangers was, why are you doing this to us? Well, because you were home. It's the same reason these, yes, these kids sort of had a reason, their dog got killed, but at the same time, is your dog getting killed in a heated thing enough for you to commit homicide? I mean, some people would say yes. Some people would say yes because they love their pets. But
looking at you, Peter. Yeah, I can appreciate these type of movies for that very reason. I think I even mentioned like Requiem for a Dream was one of those that reminded me of because of that very thing, because it's a dark ending that sits with you, and you kind of wonder why you would even want to go back, but you're also kind of tempted to. And I think that's also a strength of the film, is when you want to go back and revisit it.
Even if this is a movie, that you're not, I could watch this weekly, it's something that you just go back to visit. At least there are movies that they're morbid enough to where you don't want to watch them too often, but they're interesting enough to where you want to watch them maybe once in a while. I mean, perfect example of a movie that I will probably never watch, and I know Steven and I have talked about it. There's a film called The Serbian Film. I've done enough reading on it. I would love to talk about it on the show, but not from the aspect of watching it, but just how controversial it is. It's like Cannibal Holocaust as well. Not for everyone. A lot of disturbing content, but it sticks with you. And I think a lot of movies that are like that get slept on. I do feel like this film was sort of slept on by the mainstream.
Sure.
And I think that has to do a lot with the realism of the film and what it really puts out there. It shows an uglier side of life that is actually very real, and it's something that people are not comfortable talking about. But the goal of film isn't always to make the audience comfortable. It is to tell those stories that need to be told, that need to be put out there. And I think this film does a beautiful job at showing life isn't always so beautiful. Children are capable of horrible things, and people who come from a history of violence tend to keep that violence going. And, subtlety in this film really lends itself to telling the overall story, and I love that about it.
That's all I got to say on this film. It was definitely a treat, and it would definitely be one that I could see myself recommending to certain people. Wouldn't recommend it to everybody, and I think there would be certain eyes I would keep away from it, but I know a few people I could just be like, hey, give this a watch and let me know what you think, and say nothing more, like someone else did. So, Ramblers, have you seen Eden Lake? I would love to hear people talk about that and let us know your thoughts on, we're going to call it Twitter because I'm tired of this X shit. So, at Horror Ramblings on Twitter. If you've got a lot more to say, send us an email at horrorramblings@gmail.com. And if you want, you can join our Facebook group, or you can join our Discord, where you can talk about horror with other people. You can find us on Instagram, where we post up every now and again. And if you're feeling generous, you can support us over on patreon.com/pencilpaperproductions. Leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcasting app, if you would, please. And tell your friends to do the same if you happen to recommend the show. If you're using Spotify, check out our questions and polls. See what we post up. We probably will ask, have you seen this movie? Yes or no? And if we can think of another fucked up question to go along with it. Have you ever thought about stabbing somebody because they killed your dog?
Do you ever want to run kids over in your car?
Right. Finally, if you prefer a central hub, keep up with any and all things at pencilpaperproductions.com/horror-ramblings. Links are in the show notes for your convenience.
And remember, guys, stay spooky out there.
This has been the Horror Ramblings podcast. Join us next time for even more.
This has been a Pencil and Paper Podcast Network production.